So hey guys, appreciate the time and the opportunity to be with all of you today. I'm going to introduce myself and I'm going to take you through some content that I've prepared, and yeah, hope we have fun. So let's get going. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with the presentation that I have. So let me know. Please kind of like give me a thumbs up if you can see the deck.
Yes, it's visible.
Awesome, amazing. So the title of my session is kind of like CDPs, where to next, and I'm going to cover kind of like the basics of CDPs and then also kind of like the main business use case. So, and kind of like how OPTIMOVE actually fits and what's our vision and our take on this world. So let's get started. So firstly, about myself and about OPTIMOVE. So my name is Pini Yakuel. I'm the founder and CEO of OPTIMOVE, Israeli from Tel Aviv, born and raised. I did spend 3.5 years in New York City to start our American operation. So I got a chance to live abroad a little bit for 3.5 years. And I was in India for a week. I was in Mumbai and Bangalore. I got the regular stomach ache and everything. So I got the whole experience, the whole shebang. I really like, ras malai and gulab jamun and all of those wonderful dishes, which I love Indian food, and I enjoyed a lot of it. So yeah, so this is kind of like a little bit of fun fact about me. I've got 3 boys, a 7-year-old, 4-year-old, and 2 months old. So I'm actually back in basic training now, not sleeping well. So please forgive me if I make mistakes here and there. So that's me, and I started OPTIMOVE out of university. I was at the time kind of like doing my master's degree in stochastic modeling. So I came from kind of like the modeling world and the data world, optimization world, and started OPTIMOVE. And essentially, what is OPTIMOVE? We enable brands to scale CRM marketing, and we'll talk about it some more. But that's essentially what we do. And we started the company back in 2012. We got 300 employees today across Israel, America, and England. In London, we got a London office, and we got actually 2 employees in India. So yeah, Jigar and Mubani. So these are 2 guys in India, and we are trusted by 500 plus brands. We've been recognized by Forrester as a leader in the cross-channel campaign management wave, and as a challenger by Gartner in the multi-channel marketing hubs. And essentially what we do at a high level is our solution is, broken down into 3 pieces. On the left side, we like to think about like a brain. So on the left side is the insight. So this is the CDP, right? This is all the data. This is about getting to know your customers. And on the right side, it's about connecting with your customers. So that's the engagement. That's basically sending out the campaign, sending out the communications across email, Facebook, push, SMS, all of the channels. And in the middle, it's like the part that connects the insight, makes it actionable, and translates it into engagement, into action. So it's the activation portion that basically, and we use AI there to make it smarter. And at the bottom, you can see some of the brands that we work with. So a lot of retail and a lot of gaming, a little bit of telco, and a little bit of financial services. So that's OPTIMOVE in a nutshell. And our overview for today is, it's going to, first of all, what's a CDP? Why does it even exist? The core capabilities of CDPs, the CDP space according to BCG, a little bit about what Gartner calls multi-channel marketing hubs, because there's a lot of confusion in this space as well. So I'm going to try to make it more organized for you guys. How does enterprise businesses look at it versus mid-market? What do we see in OPTIMOVE as a challenge of tomorrow? And then I'm going to take you through kind of like what's the business use case of a CDP like OPTIMOVE, that it's ultimately to power personalization at scale. Awesome. So let's get going. So what's a CDP? When the CDP started, just so you know, there was an American guy called, called David Rabb. He is the one-man analyst. He lives in Pennsylvania, very close to Philadelphia. And And he coined this phrase, right? He started coining this phrase back in 2013, and he met me in 2013, and he was like writing in his blog, you know, yesterday I met another CDP from Tel Aviv, Israel, and then he kind of like talks about our solution and things like that. But for 3-4 years, nobody paid attention, right? So and at some point, I think I met him at this trade show, and I was like, David, what about CDP? Like, does it hold water? Like, do people now use it? Like, do people like it? It's like, no, I'm probably going to abandon it. And probably 6 months later, the entire planet was talking about CDPs. So so that's funny. But he was the guy that actually coined it, and I was actually there. I was one of the OGs of CDP without knowing I'm a CDP, right? So nobody called it like that. So what's a CDP? So first of all, it's about having a single customer view, right? So you want to have all of your customer data in one place. Originally, it's kind of like marketing owned. It's a system that's owned by marketing. You want to have the ability to activate the data. And what does activated data mean? You know, some people just pushing the data out to different systems that could be activating the data, or actually, you know, managing campaigns and controlling campaigns that could also be like a more mature way of activating the data. And the idea is that the data is kind of like available to other systems. So with a CDP, it's very easy to get the data in from different sources of data. It's very easy to get data out and share it with different systems in your ecosystem. So that's how everything started. Very broad. It doesn't distinguish between B2B businesses versus B2C businesses. What exactly does the single customer view need to include? Is it you had some ad tech players that call themselves the CDPs, some web personalization companies as a CDP. You got some tag management players that are a CDP. So there's many interpretations to what's a CDP, but I was like, those are kind of like the main 4 pillars of what is a CDP. And let's talk about the evolution. So how did we get here to something called the CDP? Well, before that, we had something called the data warehouse, right? And we still have something called the data warehouse. And both of them were aiming for this idea of single source of truth, right? So since people started using BI systems, the main problem was that you had one guy from the manufacturing coming in and saying, we had a great month. We just kind of like, sold a lot of units. And the guy from sales, like, what do you mean? We didn't sell a lot of units. We had a shitty month. And another guy from finance were like, no, what do you guys mean? It's the average month. It's just like every other month. So you had many different silos of data, and every person sometimes the data could even be the same, but the definitions are different and the metrics are different. So people are looking at reality differently. And that has always been the promise of kind of like, BI in general, right? Business intelligence is about kind of like having one single organizational truth. Everybody speaks the same language. And then there's many ways to get there, but both the data warehouse and the CDP in many ways are also playing that game, right? You're trying to reach that single source of truth. That's always correct. But let's talk about the differences between the two. Obviously, data warehouses probably came 20 or 30 years before CDPs. So a lot has changed, but data warehouse was primarily focused on financial data, right? It started as mostly about financial data because companies at the time didn't have customer data to the same degree. If you think about it, even people that were more kind of like consumer facing and they had stores, a lot of them had no loyalty program. So most of the revenue is actually not identified. You don't know who's making the purchase, right? Because there's no loyalty program or something like that. When we started to go online, every person, regardless of a loyalty program that exists or doesn't exist, every person is now a known customer, right? Because when you check out, you give us your email address, next time you use the same email address, I know you, right? Or automatically I'm going to create some kind of an ID because we're now shopping online. So we got more customer data. So a CDP is focused on customer data, right? So the new, the customer obsessed planet that we live in, all of the brands, you know, the revolution in the world where relationships matter. And in the past, kind of like it was all about your products, but now products have been commoditized, right? You can get the same product across many, many different brands. So it's about the data of the customer, the relationship with the customer, knowing the customer, treating the customer in a personalized fashion, making the customer feel like they're relevant, and we get them and we understand them and we know them, and we can connect with them on an emotional level. That's, you know, the revolution that we're living in. So CDPs are at the center of that. So the customer data is now more important and it's richer. So CDPs focus on customer data, right? I'm not saying that data warehouses didn't have customer data, right? But the main entity that the CDP is built around is the customer ID, right? And the main entity that the data warehouse was built around was not necessarily the customer ID. So data warehouse, it was mostly syncing data from internal legacy systems, right? So you had a bunch of servers within your business, nothing in the cloud, right? So and you're kind of like getting data from different legacy systems and you're getting it in, and you do like a year project or a 2-year project where you interview a ton of departments and asking them, how do you calculate this? How do you calculate that? And then you try to create some kind of a standard. And CDPs are syncing data from third-party systems, right? All of a sudden, we got a lot of, we got cloud computing, we got a lot of vendors, we're using a ton of services. Those services have APIs, and we can sync this data automatically for multiple services very easily, which didn't exist in the past. So building on that point, if you think about data warehouse, it was very hard to create new data in the data warehouse, extract data outside of the data warehouse. I remember once I met like this airline company, and I was telling them the type of data that I need to set up OPTIMOVE to build kind of like the CDP. And they're like, no, but we'll never get the data out of the data warehouse. And one guy said, I was able to get data from the data warehouse 18 months ago. It was like a war story that he was really proud of. So like, what? I mean, are you kidding me? Why do we have the data warehouse if nobody can get the data? So it's you know, systems that are more antiquated, they got a lot of processes, a lot of legacy processes. Just like any older system, it gets to be very dangerous to touch it, right? You're afraid of what's going to happen. And with CDPs, API economy, cloud computing, very easy to get data in and out, right? So that's kind of like another thing. And the users of the data warehouse has to be a very technical user, right? You got to know SQL very well. You got to know ETL processes, data piping, all of that. You got to know it very well. And with CDPs, just like with democratizing everything, you got to be tech literate. Again, there's different types of users to CDPs, and there's different types of CDPs, but the level of expertise is constantly going down, right? So it's let's call it tech literate, right? You got to understand tech, but you don't necessarily have to write code. So that's how we got here, right? Let's talk about the main capabilities of a CDP. Excuse me. So at the bottom, right, we got the capability of data aggregation and storage, right? So we want to have, you know, all of our data in one place. We want to be able to hold it and store it and aggregate it together. One layer above, we have this single customer view. So the data is kind of like processed. It's not entirely at its raw form. So it's been transformed a little bit. And now we have the single customer view. One layer on top of that, we got the analytics and insights, right? So are we able to get to discover some insights, to get some answers to deeper questions besides like how many people bought this product last month. And one layer on top of that is orchestration, decisioning, optimization. So kind of like leveraging all the insights and then being able to dispatch those insights to connect with your customers. But that layer over there is the layer that essentially is the decisioning layer, right? Everything that it's like your you know, airport control that decides who goes up and who goes down and when and why. So it's kind of like the central nervous system. And at the top, you got the actual campaign, what Americans call last mile execution, right? So the actual email being sent, the actual push message being sent, the actual banner on the website that changes in real time. So all of those kind of like messaging channels, campaign execution, and personalization. And if you look at it, you can see that, you know, the more you go up, like at the bottom, you basically, it's more. So let's talk about, like, all CDPs have more than probably 3 of these capabilities, right? So the question is, how do you score them across the different capabilities? Some CDPs are more centralized at the bottom, others are more centralized at the top, and at the bottom, probably gonna have more data, and when you go up, you're gonna have less data, but data that's curated. At the bottom, you have to be more technical. At the top, you gotta be like a business user. And at the bottom, it's probably IT is gonna buy it, and at the top, it's gonna be marketing that's gonna buy it. And going deeper into this, you can see some example vendors, right? And where they shine. So what is this one capability that they do best, right? So Treasure Data at the bottom, it's kind of like a company it looks like a data warehouse, like a database, right? You got SQL console, you got data flowing processes, you got ETL controllers. So it's much more technical. That's Treasure Data. Action IQ, it's like a very strong single customer view. Us, OPTIMOVE, like our claim to fame and what we do best is kind of like what you do with the data, like the smartest brain, the decisioning, the optimization. And you got last mile execution, folks like Braze and Emarsis at the top, right? Or Clever Tap, if you want to take an Indian company. So, if we further kind of like divide this space, so the CDP space according to BCG, you can see different vendors in the space, right? You can see OPTIMOVE, actually here's CleverTap right there. So you can see different vendors, and you can see that they're dividing the world into 2, right? So to the left, you got core data management focus, and to the right, you got core activation focus, right? So so for kind of like it's the same as I did with, so it's probably, I think the bottom 2 is what they consider to be the left side, and the top 3 is probably what they consider to be the right side. And they have different division here. They call it ingestion, unifying, intelligence, and decision-making activation. So that's pretty interesting, but that's how BCG sees it. And I like this division into 2. So either kind of like you're an activation CDP or you're a core data management CDP. Okay,
Sorry, quick question on the previous slide. I'm sorry.
Okay. Go ahead.
So are you saying that, for example, a treasure data is a CDP which does not have capabilities which are in the area of analytics, insights, orchestration, and campaign execution?
No. I'm saying, so in their case, they don't have campaign execution and personalization, but like they do have analytics and insight. I'm just saying this is the one part where they do best, right? So where they shine. It doesn't mean that they don't have, like, you know, like OPTIMOVE, we have everything, but like if you look for one thing that we do better than everybody else, is the orchestration decision optimization.
Okay, great. That's clear. And
it
even
is like
on this,
it is your USP for that particular, I think.
That's right.
You know, that's what it is, right?
Yeah. And if you go to the BC slide, I assume that even Telium is a full-fledged CDP, but you're saying that they are categorized as more focused on data management versus orchestration.
So yeah, so I think you know, like Telium and Segment and then Particle, like these guys, in many ways, it's a little bit different because I call them kind of like it's kind of like data switchboards. So which means that these guys, it's kind of like the modern tag management, right? You get real-time data coming in the form of events. And with those systems, you can easily hose that data into another platform. Like we have an integration with Segment. We don't see Segment as competition. We see Segment as an enabler. Sometimes the IT department of a company, they're gonna have this middle layer of Segment where all of the real-time data goes into Segment. And then it follows to, it routes down to OPTIMOVE for the real-time data, but then we'll be connecting to other legacy systems to get some more data. So, so Telium, I think falls, they were tag management before they were CDP. So I think they would fall here, but then again, they'll have some other capabilities.
And lastly, the question between structured, unstructured, and semi-structured data. do all CDPs manage all kinds of data, or is it more structured data?
So I would say, so maybe let's go into, so the CDPs that are at the bottom, right? They're gonna be flexible and have more capabilities with like kind of like structured, semi-structured, unstructured, all of those things. I think that, yeah, so that's gonna be more at the bottom. And as you go more to the top, you're gonna have less of that. But all of those things are kind of like getting to be commoditized, to be honest. You know, just for the audience, you know, structured is when you have a table of data and you know exactly the names of the columns and the type of data to expect in each column. Semi-structured is like a JSON file where you don't necessarily know. So one customer can come in with like 5 attributes of data, and then the next customer can come in with 2. So it's not like a table that, you know, you got 5 columns. And unstructured is sometimes like free text and stuff like that, like that you need to gulp in, you know, comments of customers on your website and things like that. I think mostly kind of like unstructured data, you would want it to get it to like more of a data lake. And CDPs, mostly I think what they need is you know, structured and semi-structured, which is something that we support as well, right? You usually the real-time data that comes in the form of JSON, and then you can get kind of like, you can ingest the data in a semi-structured fashion.
Just one last question, I'm sorry. So the companies or the third-party vendors who fall in the bottom half of the bar that you showed in the previous slide, you know, why would the companies or their clients opt for their services if they are not expert in the, you know, the upper half of the bar, the skill set which are there in the upper half of the bar, you know, the orchestration, decisioning, and optimization part, and analytics and everything?
You're saying, why are they successful if they only do the bottom?
Yes. If not the bottom, but I mean, if their USP is only the bottom part, wherein, you know, they are really great in data aggregation and storage, but they are not really great in analytics and insights and all of that.
Because you can't be good at anything, at everything. I think just, I know, by the way, in India, I know from my experience with the you know, Indian businesses, it's usually kind of like this the great desire for like one platform that does everything, and like, why can't you do this and this and this and this and this and this and this? And people at the bottom, they solve the single customer view problem. So people are saying my data is a mess, just like the same problem used to solve as a data warehouse many years ago. So like, my data is a mess. I need my data in one place, coming in from multiple sources. I want to make sure it's cleaned, it's deduped, it's, you know, the identities are correct and things like that. And from that point, I'll be able to use different technologies, but I can hydrate those technologies with this data and make them better. So like, if I have a Salesforce to send out my campaigns, I'll take the data that resides in treasure data, and I'll make Salesforce smarter. Does this make sense?
Okay, that I got your point, sir.
So there's one more question on the chat. Abhishek asked this question is, can we say that on the BCG chart that brands on the left-hand side are essentially data houses with additional features? Would that be one way of describing them?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
1000%. And on the right side, I would say it's kind of like, again, companies with very strong data capabilities, but this data is mostly intended to be used to activate campaigns and actually, you know, talk to clients and do things like that. So I'm giving here a prediction, and my prediction is that the companies on the right side will not be called CDPs in the future, and they will be merged into the MMH category, to the multi-channel marketing hub category. So I prove that if we look at the MMH category, and by the way, OPTIMOVE here is a challenger. You can see us over here with this is the multi-channel marketing hubs. So it says here that what is an MMH? It's a digital marketing leaders use multi-channel marketing hubs to orchestrate contextually relevant experiences across complex journeys. Vendor emphasize unified customer profiles supported by predictive insights to drive personalized interactions. So they're talking about unified profiles and predictive insights and personalization. So some MMHs, OPTIMOVE included, have a very strong CDP-like data foundation, right? So I think from inside here, we probably have the strongest data foundation, but Emarsys has some of it, and Salesforce and Adobe are building a CDP. So I would say that's a part of it. So yeah, so I think that ultimately what's going to happen, people on the right side will be here, and you'll still have kind of like on the left side, the core, data management CDPs will keep the name. I think that's who's going to keep the name or the category.
Pini, a question here from one of us. So Suresh asked this question, is that are CDPs more relevant for companies which have big data and unstructured data? And therefore, if they don't have technically big data, they don't really need a CDP? Or are CDPs going to be relevant for any organization which has any amount of data?
So that's an amazing question, because it's actually the next slide.
Awesome.
So you can see how those different capability layers, how different size businesses will basically build their tech stack, right? So here we're looking at the existence of like a data warehouse, a CDP, and an MMH, a multi-channel marketing hub, right? So you can see for a large enterprise that's been around for many years, right? Let's take a big American retailer or something like that. The data warehouse is there, and you can't take it out because it's, the business is going to die, right? It's doing a lot of important things. So what you do, you bolt on top of the data warehouse the CDP to basically give you the process data and single customer view. And then you got room for both of them, right? It's a very big company. They have very complex data needs. You got room for both the data warehouse and the CDP. Now, when the CDP is there, you can share data with multiple consumers of data, different vendors, different departments. You can solve different problems with logic and things like that. So you got room to keep this layer on top of the data, and you need it because you're fighting with the data warehouse. It's not giving you anything you need. You got complex data problems, and then you put the CDP here, and on top of the CDP, you got the MMH, right? And the CDP can, provide the MMH with some data, and and then the MMH is probably going to do some of the analytics and insights, or the CDP, depends, right? This division is not completely scientific, but the bottom line is that at a big enterprise, you're going to have all three of them, probably, right? Mature mid-market. So if you have a mature business that's like mid-market, right? So they're doing a few hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Or let's say, 200 million to 3 billion, right? Mature mid-market. In this situation, they may have a data warehouse, but it's not that complex, right? The business is not that old. They got a solid data warehouse. They feel pretty comfortable with it, right? It does a lot of things very well. So you can share the data from the data warehouse with the MMH, and sometimes you're not going to even need a CDP because they're like, yeah, we're cool, we got it, right? We've built the data warehouse 5 years ago, but we actually built it on, it's okay, right? On Teradata, or we build it on, BigQuery if we're lucky, and we start with BigQuery early on, or with Snowflake. So we don't need a CDP. We're fine, right? It's not like the large enterprise that everything is very, cumbersome, and you need the CDP to sit on top of the data warehouse. And sometimes if you go to like the young mid-market, so a company that basically sets up and they already achieve a really nice scale, but they're a very young company, right? They're like, fuck it. They're just going to skip the data warehouse phase and start with the CDP, right? So the CDP is going to become the data warehouse, right? You don't need to go that far back. So that's basically how I see the division between, and obviously every company, it's not like it's like archetypes of solution stacks that you're going to find.
Now, would you say, Pini, that eventually data warehouses, especially for the new breed of companies, as they scale up and become larger, will they ever need a data warehouse, or CDPs are fundamentally going to be the replacement for data warehouse in the short to long term?
Or I think very big companies will have, maybe you're not going to call it a data warehouse, but you're probably going to have
Data lake.
always, right. You're always going to have data that's kind of like more technical and closer to the machine, right? So it's kind of like you got the, the application layers that sit at the top and the infrastructure that sits at the bottom. So you're always going to have some data processes within Azure or AWS or GCP, and you may not call it a data warehouse, but it's going to be data processes that are more infrastructural, and then you're going to make those very accessible to business users with a CDP.
Okay, fair.
So the companies which were at the right side of the BCG matrix, I think they basically would target the mature mid-market and young mid-market, right? Because their expertise lies more, you said that those companies will merge with MMH in future.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Most likely, I think sometimes in a special situation, but yeah, you're right. It does make sense. Or they can be the age of the enterprise as well, but yes, it does make sense for sure.
So as OPTIMOVE, do you all focus on the smaller and mid-sized companies, or do you all also go after the enterprise companies?
We go after, like, our sweet spot is like, let's say 100 million in revenue to 3 billion. We do have something like a Staples or, somebody that's doing a lot more, but yeah, I would say like the lower end of the enterprise is what we mostly do. We do have some outliers kind of like at the top and at the bottom.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Pini,
Okay,
can you just Pini, just wanted to get some thoughts. Like, for example, I work with Publicis, and we recently made a big acquisition with a company called Epsilon, okay, yes, in the US. So if you could you basically try and talk about something on the likes of what an Epsilon or an axiom is. Okay, are they CDPs, or how do because they talk about now we talk about something called core ID, okay, saying that we basically use our core ID to basically be able to provide solutions to clients to basically be able to enable them to remarket and leverage their first party data, okay, to try and start targeting customers, right? So because they have a lot of we have a lot of insights that we can actually be able to leverage for businesses to be able to drive and target them more efficiently, and also trying to drive them very clear outcomes. We say that we actually can promise or deliver clear outcomes in terms of the kind of audiences that we will be able to actually be able to reach and be able to drive conversions from. So can you be able to throw some lights on that side as well, and say, how do you as OPTIMOVE, when you try to benchmark yourself, say vis-a-vis say an Epsilon or an Axiom, how would you position yourself as?
Yeah, so it's I think this space is definitely kind of like a bit murky, that you find this to be confusing, which I totally understand. But like, so first of all, Publicis is like, it's an agency, right? It's not a tech company. And Epsilon in many ways was a tech-enabled agency. They do have some products, like, but they actually operate it for you, right? So it's more of an agency. And Epsilon was mostly about that many pieces, right? But some of it is email marketing, and some of it is they actually had they have some of the third-party data through Axiom, right? So that's a whole other thing, right? That's like a data provider that that has third-party data, which is a data that like the brand doesn't have. CDPs are about first-party data, right? Which is the data that the brand collects, right? So the brand is collecting transactional data, so all the financial transactions with the brand, that the brand collects all of the behavioral data, which is kind of like when you visit their website and their app and things like that, and what you do and what you click on. So I think those are the main differences. Yes, in general, you can talk about, it's all marketing, right? So you're gonna say, let's use the third-party data to target customers better. And if I know that they're making, like, the household income is larger than $200,000 a year, I can offer them the expensive product. And that's essentially personalization, right? So it's all a little bit connected, but I would say, I think like Epsilon and Axiom are considered as a CDP. But maybe you guys are doing moves towards that direction, could be.
Right.
Yeah, but it's related, right, in the neighborhood.
Yeah, because we in fact, that's exactly because we've been talking to Epsilon folks here, okay, and they typically talk about, see, India has been traditionally not a first party data market, right? For a lot of CPG brands here, honestly, do not have any first party data. So a lot of the data that sits in their DMPs are majorly third party data. So right now, in fact, brands are just about thinking about basically saying, how can we start capturing first party data? So that is the reason many brands in India are actually thinking of going direct to consumer, saying that becomes a way for us to then start looking at trying to capture first party data. And then we then start integrating our first party data with our third party data, and potentially also our point of sale data. Okay, say if we have retail presence and we have our own stores, then probably also integrate that data, and then we create one unified data pool. Okay, and then we then start leveraging a CDP to probably then drive a segmentation of or creating cohorts around that particular data. So that's the overall understanding that I have, okay, clearly in the nature of the way how it's being looked at, okay, because the focus here is all about trying to deliver outcomes for clients, because clients here are very clearly saying that, okay, fine, okay, what is the kind of outcome that you can drive as part of, in terms of telling me how much conversions can you actually be able to effect on the back of deploying a clear segmentation strategy, right? So saying that if you are going to be segmenting these the audiences, okay, and in terms of what's the level of conversion efficiency that you will be able to drive for me. And so it's the conversations are more centered around that specific aspect. So in the nature of how you guys position your offering, okay, to clients, is that something that comes out as an ask from the client, saying that is there an aspect of efficiency, okay, from the perspective of driving targeting or retargeting, that you guys also tell clients in terms of, is that something as a concept does CDP actually enable or help deliver?
Yeah, I think definitely kind of like the ROI of personalization and you know, if you, and of course, kind of like if you can be more granular and more, you know, because the opposite of everything we do is kind of like batch and blast, right? So you take one segment, one message, you know, it's kind of like Don Draper at Mad Men, you know, and that's it. And everything we do is the opposite of that, right? It's about de-averaging, right? We are actually de-averaging the reality. So obviously you need to prove that this can make money, and we actually use something called the CRM contribution. You can read about in our blog. Essentially what we say, it goes back to measurement. So a lot of this is something that we do very well, is we actually measure real incremental value, incremental uplift, by always using control groups and using statistical tests to see that if you're doing something, you're actually defeating the placebo group, right? And now with COVID, and everybody knows how the vaccine works, so everybody, at least now for me, it's I just posted I posted my son's home COVID test on LinkedIn, saying, look, even the small piece of plastic has like the letter C for control and the letter T for test. And I'm trying to persuade you guys to do it in marketing for 10 years. And half the people agree and half the people don't. So I was talking to the other half. So incrementality for us is how we measure incremental dollars. And then we basically say, look, your business is doing like 100 million. We can show that 20 million comes from CRM. So the CRM contribution is 20% of your business. And we're showing that if you get more granular and you improve your coverage and you go across more channels, you can actually increase that number from 20% to 30% or from 5% to 15%, depends on your business. But I'll touch that a bit later in the deck.
Sure, great, thanks.
So I'll just cover this one briefly, but if we look at those capability layers, the way we see the world is we say, look, the top was something that kind of like delivering emails or push messages. We call it the challenge of yesterday. You know, we now know how to do it, right? It doesn't mean it's very easy, but there's plenty of vendors that can do that. The bottom is kind of like the challenge of today. People today are all about kind of like merging their data, consolidating their data, deduping their data, having a good single customer view in one place. But the way we see it, it's actually not enough because, and by the way, and I bet with all of you now that if you wait 15, 20 years, there's going to be another thing that essentially does what the data warehouse used to do and what the CDP is. It's going to have another name. It's going to be called, I don't know, Data Fusion Future. I don't know, a DFF or something that, CDPs were not, it's not going to be enough for the data. And at any point in time, when you talk to somebody, you say, how's your data? It's like, mess, shit, I don't like it. I can't see what I want to see. It's not accurate enough. Last week I found a mistake. It's like a very challenging thing to do. And at any point in time, everybody's data is a mess. So what's our human intuition? Let's clean up the mess. And then you ask them, what are you going to do with it? First, let me clean it up, and then I'm going to think about it, right? So it's like let's clean it up. But what are you going to do with it? Let's just have a good pantry, right? With all the raw materials, right? Raw ingredients. Let's have the rice in one place. Let's have the beans in another place. Let's have kind of like the vegetables. Let's have the curry. Let's have all of our raw ingredients in one place. And I'm like, what about the cooking? And nobody talks about the cooking. So we think that the cooking, kind of like the challenge of tomorrow, is going to be those two parts that obviously OPTIMOVE does very well. It's about kind of like, what do you make of the data? What do you understand from the data? What do you learn from the data? And then how do you use the data for better decisioning, better orchestration, better optimization? So, and we're starting to see that, right? There's more people, because it's always been the case. I got to build a data warehouse. Okay, now you have a data warehouse. Are you doing anything with it? No. I got to build a big data lake. Now you have a data lake. I got to build, it's always like that. So it's the same thing. So now I'm going to move to the other part. So we understand kind of like the basic elements of a CDP. And now let's see how a CDP powers personalization at scale. So now I'm going to go kind of like to the other part of activation. I'm going to talk about kind of like, this idea of CRM marketing, personalization, CRM campaigns, retention marketing. How does a CDP actually power that, and how does that happen? I'm still going to keep it high level, so no, not going to do a demo or anything. So let's, and feel free to ask questions as before. So let's talk about the consumer revolution. So who is the new age consumer, right? So first of all, it's a consumer with selective loyalty. So they're no longer as loyal as they used to be, right? They got more choice, they have more places to go. They're of a different generation, kind of like a lot of them are millennials and Gen Zs. So that's the new consumer. They do expect, they have a different bar, right? They're very, they expect relevant communication. They expect personalization. They expect a lot more from you. They expect a better experience. They don't like when things don't work. They're not as forgiving as their parents, right? They're not as forgiving. And lastly, they buy a lot more online, right? They just buy online. Way, way, way more than their parents and their grandparents. And those three things existed 2 years ago. And during COVID, it probably accelerated, within 18 months, we probably accelerated by 6 years, probably 4x acceleration for sure in 18 months. So everything was accelerated by COVID-19. And if we look at the state of CRM marketing, and I've been doing this for many, many years myself. So what do we see? Kind of like, what's happening in CRM marketing? So first of all, the tech is better than ever, right? So I've been talking about the same things for 10 years ago, but today we are so much closer to actually achieve them. So we got the data technologies are much, much better. We got those crazy databases like Snowflake and Firebolt and BigQuery and things like that. So it's in the cloud, endless compute power. It's very expensive, by the way, but at least you can do it. So the data technology, the real-time technology, we got Kafka streams and PubSub and Kinesis, and you can stream real-time data into those queuing systems. And you're not limited, you can ingest everything. Again, it costs you money, but like the scale is endless. And you got great messaging technologies, right? You can reach people via ad platforms like Facebook and Instagram, and you can, and retargeting, and you can reach people with web push and SMS, and you know, the messaging technologies are getting better and better. So the tech is way better. That's one thing. And we know that CRM marketing delivers very good ROI. When you speak to customers on a personalized manner, they reward you with loyalty. They reward you with purchases and engagement and word of mouth, and it works, right? So, and we talked about how we measure things before to the questions. So we see that the top brands that use us, they can attribute up to 33% to the revenue to CRM marketing. So imagine if you're doing 300 million a year, you can say because of the personalization element of the business, 100 million can be attributed to that. Obviously, that's the best people that do it. The average is 10%, right? The average is 10%. It's not 33%, but and the lower ones are like 2 or 3 or 4%. So sometimes, so the ROI is very high. We get really good ROI on CRM investment because, you know, it's not we don't pay Google and Facebook for the clicks, right? It's already our own customers, right? So we can just better engage with our first party data. And the ultimate challenge is scale. So if you want to run, you know, 5 segments, 10 journeys, 7 journeys across 12 segments or something like that, you can manage, right? You can manage. But think about all the work that needs to happen. You need to get the data right. You need to get the data piped into the same place. You need to build the audiences, create the flows and the automations, write the brief for the design and the studio. Like, it's a lot of marketing ops. There's a ton of marketing ops to do CRM marketing properly. And data is the biggest enabler, right? But there's more things to do. So if I want to be really personalized, I don't want to do just kind of like one campaign a month and go back to my executive and show, look, you know, the new churn campaign just generated whatever, you know, $200,000 of uplift. Fine, but I don't want to celebrate one thing. I want a machine, right? I want this thing happening all the time. I want this thing happening. I want to delight my customers at every possible junction, at every possible state in their life cycle. I want to go in and tell them something relevant to, you know, to boost their lifetime value, to boost their loyalty. So that's really difficult. So why isn't it happening? Why is it so hard, right? So on the left side, this is what CDPs are trying to do, right? We don't have enough data. The data is not accessible to marketing teams. There's many different data silos. They're dependent in data experts, so they need to ask somebody from IT to run some kind of an analysis for them. They don't have enough access to data, ability to discover insights. All of those things do not exist well enough. So that's one of the reasons, because if I do have more access to data, I can create more segments, I can have more ideas, and I can push those ideas into production. So when data is preventing me to do that, I have to ask for favors and get different departments involved, and that takes a lot of time. And the second part is no test and learn. In order to run hundreds of segments and hundreds of campaigns, you need to be able to know very fast which ones are working and which ones do not. So it goes back to when you run those campaigns need to be ran as experiments, right? As scientific experiments where you can very quickly understand which ones of them work, which don't work, which ones you need to kill, which ones you need to keep, which ones you need to refine. This entire philosophy of test and learn and optimization. And in there, you need to be able to use machine learning to tell you, hey, don't worry about these ones, right? Here's 5 campaigns that I'm telling you to kill because I looked at the data, and just trust me. And you just click a button, right? So to manage hundreds of campaigns and hundreds of experiments, you actually need to have kind of like a test and learn mentality with all the tech that goes with it. And lastly, you cannot be running, it's like this concept of a multi-channel marketing hub. You cannot be having an email team, a mobile team, an e-commerce team, a website team, and all of those teams, each one of them, they have their own goal, and they don't talk to one another. So there's one customer, you get emails from the emails team, but at the same time, the website is trying to tell you something else. You know, so that's another problem, that basically it creates a messaging that's not symmetric, right? And it's also there's a ton of redundant work because they each work in their own silo. So those are the things that prevent personalization from scaling. And if you think about optimization, like the test and learn component, we are kind of like in this CRM revolution, which is very similar to ad tech. So if you remember, 10 years ago, you had this kind of like performance marketer that person was kind of like the god of the marketing department. He or she would know how to find the best CAC to LTV ratio or LTV to CAC ratio. They would find how to, drop your PPC spend versus the ROI that you're getting, what ad copy works versus what doesn't. They had great intuition. They were very technical, and they were like the wizards of ad tech. And if you had a person like that, you would drive a lot of growth. And what happened throughout the years is basically Google and Facebook democratized those capabilities. So now you just need to say, here's my budget, here's 5 different pieces of creative. And you say to Google or Facebook, just kind of like optimize by impressions or by clicks or by ROAS or by this or by that. So we are leading the same type of revolution in CRM marketing, where we're saying, instead of the marketer building the CRM journey with rules, right? With rule-based approach that you say, oh, if somebody bought, I want to show them this. If they didn't buy, I want to show them that. If they opened the email, I want to show them this. If they didn't open the email, I want to show them that. I want to send them this message or that message. So all the burden and all the decisioning falls on the human, and it's not scalable. That's what we're saying. It's very much not scalable. So our approach is the human says, here's all the different things I want to say. And now the customers are just become eligible to different messages. So I'm eligible today to 5 different messages. The machine chooses 1 or 2. The next day, the machine is going to choose another one. And my journey is just being mapped by the AI. So that's our approach to optimization. It's the same revolution that happened with AdTech. So last but not least, kind of like to boil everything down, how do you create this personalization at scale? How do you reach a higher lifetime value of your customers? It's essentially the CDP gives you the data, right? Gives you the access to data and insights. You have an orchestration engine that's essentially the built-in experimentation optimizations over here. And it's a multi-channel marketing hub. All of that goes into this AI map customer journey machinery, which gives you personalization at scale. And this is going to be my mic drop. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that, Pini. I think I'm going to open it up for questions. So anybody has a question, please just put up your hand and you can unmute yourself and ask Pini. Anybody across the board?
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. This is Abhishek.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So on one particular slide, I think you had mentioned CRM-based marketing and how that is, quite efficient. So I just want to check: is CRM-based marketing the same as performance marketing, or is that a subset of? Is one the subset of the other?
No, it's the other side of the river, right? So performance marketing is typically what you do on ad platforms, right? When you pay CPC, like you pay for a click or impression. And CRM marketing is the marketing that you do on your existing customers. So it's already the people that you have in your database, and you want to maximize their lifetime value and increase their loyalty.
So it's more through owned media channels and direct channels like email, text, WhatsApp, those kind of things, and not a third-party media.
So today it's a bit blurry, right? Because with Facebook, you can do custom audience, and with Google, you can do customer match. So then you're actually running a CRM campaign. We call it a CRM marketing campaign, but you're doing it inside an ad platform. But they're your customers, right? You have their emails. You show Facebook their emails, and that's how. So I think it's going to get more and more blurry, and probably in the future, I think that even in ad platforms, you know, we see it very nicely in B2B marketing when we do like a ABM, account-based marketing. So we see that kind of like data is becoming a commodity. So you can get the data, and then your campaign mindset becomes a very similar one to a CRM marketing campaign.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Aditya, go ahead.
Yeah, so just building on your current what you just answered, I sort of wanted to understand what level of integration does a CDP provide when it comes to third-party ad tech? So, for example, like you mentioned, Facebook, or if you're using Google AdWords, to what extent does my CDP allow me to refine my targeting when it comes to third-party ad tech?
Yeah, so it's essentially like you have all your data in your CDP, right? So you can build a segment or an audience of, you know, 20 people even, right? And then programmatically and automatically via API, you can push it out to Facebook and Google, and you can via API, you know, populate the audience within Facebook and then deplete it when you want to. And you can also measure it in the, you know, what we do, we measure it in the CDP, because then we see what actually happens. Like, do those people buy more, right? We still have the control group in OPTIMOVE that we don't send to Facebook, and we compare the two groups and want to see what happens. So in terms of governing, what we don't do is we don't control the bid, we don't control the budget, stuff like that. We control the audience.
Okay, who you're targeting basically is what the CDP provides.
Right, the CDP tells you, right, who you're targeting, and then with that mindset, right, when you know the audience, you're basically coming up with a creative or what you want to say.
Right, and that's at any scale, right? Like you mentioned, it can be done with as small as a group of 20 individuals, and if it can be done at a much larger scale.
Yes, no, 1,000. Usually, what you want to do is, again, you want to do the opposite of batch and blast. But the limitation is that Facebook and Google typically don't allow. They would give you the minimum audience size.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
So, Pini, as a question, as a use case in a CDP, typically, how many segments can you create from first-party data? Is it limitless, or, you know, do you?
So our kind of like our really best customers, the one that take us to the edge, let's call it like that. They can do something crazy like 3,000 different personas on a weekly basis, 3,000 different segments that get different messages, and it becomes like a money machine.
Wow.
But that's, I would say, our healthy median, like people that do well, they can do something like 200 segments a week. Not within a day, right? It takes them a few months to ramp up and get there, but like they get there.
And
You're talking about customer segments? The customer segments
Yes.
we are talking? Okay,
Yes.
Okay.
And as a CDP, it allows you to create these customer segments one time, and then the machine takes over, or does the machine automatically also create segments basis analysis of the data?
So that's a great question. So the machine, like machines are good at optimizing, but after we gave the machine the boundaries and the framework, the machine is not good at kind of like creating something from scratch, right? So unless we code that use case, right? So we have something called OptiBot, which is like a bot, and we tell OptiBot, for example, look for a, so we can find, hey, here's a group of one-timers that you didn't speak to in the last month. So we can find kind of like holes within your program, and we create a segment out of it. But we coded that, right? It's not like the machine is gonna come up with, not yet, right? Like, hey, you should try 1 + 1. That's a good idea. Not today, right? But the machine can say, here's a segment that you ran, and you're actually making all of the money from a 10% sub-segment. So you run something with your VIPs and you make money, but all of this money comes from VIPs who mostly buy shoes.
Okay.
So then we can say this will come from the machine, because it will look at micro segments within the larger group and will compare the results to its own control group and see what's happening.
Okay.
So it's a combination, but most it's still kind of like the marketer still needs to come up with like the creative idea. I think this hasn't been, you know, completely hasn't been replaced yet. It just we're making the job of the marketer more specific and saying, you create the framework, you create the rules of the world, right? You say this is gravity, this is soil, this is sky, but then within that, let the machine do the optimization.
Okay. Okay. And therefore, even things like copy, etc. Let's say if you have 200 segments a week, the actual message that's going to them is still created by, not by the system. It has to be created by the team.
Right.
Or,
so you have, so that's actually an interesting differentiation to make. You got the segments, but then you got, so the segments provide you one level of personalization, but then the content provides you another level of personalization. So for each one of these segments, you got the content, but the template itself can be programmatic. So it can permute and becomes like thousands of more different permutations based on your product affinity and your life cycle stage and things like that. So, you know, so the head banner of the email is going to talk about your favorite department, or it's going to show your product recommendation banner. You're going to see one set of product recommendation. I'm going to see another set of product recommendation, but we both belong to the same segment of new customers who are about to churn.
Yeah.
So,
okay, fair enough. No, the reason I ask is actually because 2 weeks down the line, we have a session which is completely dedicated to personalization and hyper personalization, right? Which is really going down. And therefore,
right.
us is, I mean, from a CDP perspective, is hyper personalization also the same as what a CDP can do? I mean, is that what they're designed for?
That's us. We are the CDP that is designed to help you scale personalization, to do hyper personalization. That's exactly OPTIMOVE. OPTIMOVE is the business mission is to increase lifetime value by doing hyper personalization. And the way you get to hyper personalization, if you don't have a strong data foundation, you're not going to be able to do that.
It all starts with great data.
Yeah. Maybe I did the wrong session. That's what you're saying?
No. I think it's a good build up to that, because what will happen is, I think the understanding of what a CDP can do, especially because we just came out of a data infrastructure or data engineering architecture session, and CDPs clearly are somewhere coming in between the traditional data warehouse, data lakes, while they will exist, but CDPs is kind of a new way to manage data that is going to be part of the future. And it's critical because as you go into an environment where hyper personalization is going to become a norm, if you want to retain, engage, and get higher value from your customers, then I guess that's where CDPs will continue to play a big role, right? And like you said, the name could change, but fundamentally they will keep doing the same, right?
Yeah, you're always going to have somebody putting data together and cleaning it.
Absolutely, awesome. Sorry, Karthik, question?
Yeah. So I had one question for Pini. So specifically from the perspective of generating insights, okay, through so how do you guys go about it? Like, for example, is there a kind of an insights engine that continues to keep powering all the personalization that happens? So would you be able to throw some light around that in terms of how that entire aspect of converting data into insights? How does that entire thing happen in your CDP?
Yeah. So maybe this is something. So yeah, we have something called. It's pretty unique. Nobody does that. And it's sometimes we are, as a company, I think we're too smart for our own good, but that's a general theme that we have a problem with. But we have something called OptiBot, which is kind of like a machine learning bot that would surface different types of insights. Just trying to find a nice example for you guys to see. Yeah. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
So you can see kind of like a OptiBot is like surfacing different cards, right? And
right.
Some of them would be about data anomaly, right? So we take a metric and the bot tells you this number went up, this number went down, and you can see all of these. Some of them will be about notifications, right? Your best campaign last week generated this and this and that, and go to campaign analysis and see what happens. So like simple BI stuff. Right. And some cooler stuff is going to say, hey, look, what I just told you before, you got a campaign that's essentially is not statistically credible. So this campaign is not making money.
Right.
But if you look at one of the sub-segments, so and we tell you exactly, so this is the segment of people with bottom 50% order amount, new customers, they are actually, they actually defeated their own control group. So you can see that they're making more money and against their own control group. So if you ran this campaign only for them, and then you have a button that you can click that says keep the 49%. So stop running for the rest of it. So, and here we're going to tell you this campaign wasn't effective during the past 12 days. Just kill it, right? You can have a button to kill it. And many different use cases, that tell you, again, this is another one of these, and this is 29%. So there's more and more, there's many different. So this is like the AI part that helps you kind of like make sense of all of this.
Got it.
Mess of a lot of personalization at scale.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, because the idea here, what we can keep getting a lot of requirements from our clients, specifically from a category perspective, right? Building that insight at a category level, and clearly trying to tell you, okay, how do I, like, for example, if I'm a grocery consumer, say, for example, if I'm a beauty consumer, okay, and if I have to start making audience segments based on the nature and the type of buying that happens from various types of beauty consumers, like, for example, is price important, or is the catalog important, is the content or quality of the content important, what exactly? So based on that, is there some kind of an example that you would be able to share, specifically saying that the bot was able to clearly pick up these specific set of insights that clearly is able to tell us, okay, clearly the nature, the kind of buying that happens, these are the kind of variables that are the ones that are actually impacting the sale, and then clearly then be able to try and then obviously creating those specific set of cohorts which we think will probably be the most likely to convert.
Yes, we got we got another thing that, so we got a lot of predictive capabilities. So we say, like, for example, we have a model that's likelihood to buy. So what's the likelihood of a customer to buy in the next month or the next 2 months, and then essentially it opens up like a decision tree and shows you, oh yeah, like people that visited the site in the last 7 days, they're more likely to buy, right? Very obvious. But then you get very distinct thresholds. So it depends on the attributes that you have in your raw data. A lot of the challenges around the machine learning is not the math, it's mostly the machine learning ops, right? The ML ops. How do you pipe the data from one side to another? How do you, break it down and flatten it and organize it? Those things are pretty challenging. So that's mostly, but yeah, we do it with many different use cases, which is really cool.
Sure, got it. Thank you.
Guys, I think we have time for one last question. If anybody has a question for Pini, please unmute yourself and ask. Or else, I think we can move on. So I don't think there are any more questions, Pini. So firstly, thank you so much for a fantastic session. I think big eye-opener to the world of CDPs and now MMHs, which are coming up. Oh, sorry, Aditya, you have a question? Okay, good. Aditya saying bye. Thank you so much for your time. It's been wonderful. And, we hope to see you in India soon and definitely treat you to some gulab jamun and rasmalai the next time you're here. And we'll make sure you don't get a stomach upset for sure.
There wasn't the gulab jamun and the rasmalai. It was this, I had a juice in a coffee shop in Mumbai.
Oh,
okay. It was this juice. Yeah, it was just this juice. It wasn't the, so.
Okay. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And you have a lovely evening ahead. And this has been a wonderful session. Really good having you here. Yes. Thank you everyone for taking out the time from schedules to be here. Hope this session is helpful. And we'll see you all on Sunday. Good night. Take care, everyone.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.